My wife cheated on me with the owner of our son's school. When I discovered it, I revealed everything during the graduation ceremony and left her on her knees, begging for forgiveness. My name is Gabriel. I'm 36 years old and work as an IT technician. I've always been a calm, methodical person, focused on making sure everything runs smoothly, both in my work and at home. I'm the type who prefers peace over being right. You know, I pride myself on being a good father and a present husband. I've always tried to stay up to date, both in technology and in family life. Despite being tired from work, I never stopped seeking quality time with my family. I thought that was enough, that simply being present was enough to keep everything stable. My wife's name is Camila. She's 34 years old, a psychologist, and was always seen as a centered, educated, and somewhat reserved woman. She worked part-time at a clinic and dedicated the rest of her time to taking care of our son and the house. She was the type of woman all the neighbors praised. You know the one, always with a smile on her face and a sweet word for everyone? That was Camila. But now, looking back, maybe that smile was more of a facade than I wanted to admit. The truth is, I saw her as a life partner. Or at least I thought I did. Before we continue to the rest of this heartbreaking experience at the hands of people that are supposed to ride and live for us, our channel has been quite stagnant in growth, and a simple click of a button can change via like, share, or subscribe button. Anyone you do would be great. Thanks. Now to the rest of the story. Our son, Lucas, is 7 years old and studies at a private school with a good reputation. Nothing luxurious, but we adjusted our budget to give him the best possible education. He's always been intelligent, curious, and learned a lot from his mother's intellect. It was because of the school's proximity to our house and the structure it offered that we decided to enroll him there. The school was modern, full of extracurricular activities, with well-trained teachers, and an owner whom, until then, I had only known from a distance. A kind man, always well-dressed. But something about him always bothered me, even before anything happened. Camila and I have been together for 11 years. We met during a first aid course when she was still in university, and I was working freelance, setting up the computers for the event. From the beginning, there was a strange connection, intense, but at the same time peaceful. We completed each other. She was emotion. I was reason. She was fire. I was earth. And for a long time, that worked. We got married after 3 years of dating and lived that perfect couple dream for a long time. Lucas was born 2 years after the wedding, and we thought that would be the pinnacle of our happiness. Our routine was more or less stable. I worked from home most of the week and attended to clients remotely. She left in the morning and returned in the early afternoon. After lunch, we'd share chores and spend time with Lucas. On weekends, we had simple plans, movies, the park, visiting relatives. We weren't the most in-love couple in the world, but the partnership seemed solid. Of course, sometimes there were silly fights, but nothing out of the ordinary. Until, without me noticing at first, that harmony began to crumble, little by little. The atmosphere at Lucas's school was modern, with frequent parent meetings and educational events. And it was at one of these meetings that I first truly noticed the owner of the school. His name was Mauricio, a man around 40 years old, charismatic, the type who charms anyone with just a handshake. He spoke eloquently, dressed even better, and knew exactly how to manipulate the environment. Always very polite to everyone, but he had that kind of charm that crosses the professional line. At that moment, I thought I was exaggerating. I didn't know to what extent he would become part of my story, in the worst possible way. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Camila had always been methodical, organized, with well-defined schedules. But suddenly, she began arriving late from the clinic. First it was 15 minutes, then 30, then an hour or more. She always came with a prepared excuse, a patient in crisis, a last-minute meeting, a traffic jam. At first, I believed her without question. After all, she was a psychologist, these things could happen. But the problem was her gaze. She no longer looked me in the eyes the way she used to. I started to feel those uncomfortable butterflies in my stomach. It didn't take long for me to notice she was dressing up more. I swear I'm not a jealous or controlling man, but I know my wife. She never wore much makeup or daring clothes to work. Suddenly, she was investing in new outfits, expensive perfumes, and makeup, even on her days off. I asked her about it once, and she said she wanted to feel better about herself. Okay, but why now after years together? Why such a drastic and sudden change? The lies began to accumulate. Small things she used to tell me in detail now became vague answers. Once, I asked where she had gone after work. She paused, then said she'd gone to the pharmacy, but the bag in the car was from a clothing store. Another day, she said she had a headache and didn't want to talk, but spent the whole night on her phone, laughing to herself. I began to notice that her phone had become an extension of her body, always in her hand, always with the screen facing down. Notifications silenced. Password changed. My internal alarm went off. You know that sixth sense? That was it. It started to scream, and I ignored it. She called me paranoid, said it was all in my head, work stress. But something inside me knew something was wrong. It wasn't just paranoia. It was a real feeling, a constant discomfort. I started sleeping badly. I kept replaying details, reviewing her behavior, trying to pinpoint where the change had begun. And no matter how hard I tried, the answer kept slipping through my fingers. It was like watching the house burn and pretending it was just a lit candle. One detail that really caught my attention was the time she began spending in front of the computer. Before, she barely touched her laptop outside of work hours. But suddenly, She was always researching something or answering emails. Sometimes she'd stay locked in the office for hours, and if I entered, she'd quickly minimize the window. I tried to pretend it was normal. She's a psychologist. Maybe she was studying. I don't know. But deep down I knew. Everything was strange, and she was trying too hard to hide something. It was too obvious to be just my imagination. The trigger came on a Saturday night. We had planned to watch a family movie, but she said she was tired and went to bed early. By chance, I went to the living room to get a glass of water and heard her soft voice laughing on the phone. When I approached, she immediately hung up and pretended to be asleep. That moment turned my world upside down. It felt like a punch to the stomach. I stood in the dark for a few seconds, heart racing. And that's when the penny finally dropped. Something was going on, and I was going to find out what. After that night, I stopped pretending everything was fine. But I also knew I couldn't act impulsively. I needed proof. Not just for my pride or anger, but because if I was right, my whole life was about to fall apart. And if I was wrong, I'd just be another paranoid fool. That's when I installed the spy app on her phone. It wasn't easy, but as an IT technician, I knew exactly how to do it without leaving a trace. It was ugly, yes, but at that moment, my sanity depended on it. The first 48 hours were a kick in the chest. Deleted messages, cleared browsing history, erased call logs. She was hiding everything carefully. But even so, the app managed to extract some conversations from the cloud backup. And that's when I began to see a name repeating itself, Mauricio. Initially, there was nothing overtly romantic. But the frequency, the timing of the messages, the emojis, they spoke louder than words. I decided not to confront her yet. I needed more. It was a horrible feeling to see how everything fit together. But at the same time, it gave me focus. I started following her discreetly. Yes, I became that guy. I'd leave in the car about 10 minutes after her, pretending I had a client to visit. A couple of times, I went to the clinic. Everything seemed normal. Other times, she took different routes, stopped in strange places for half an hour, then continued as if nothing had happened. I wrote everything down, filmed, took photos. I felt like a complete idiot for getting to this point. But when you feel someone is betraying you, dignity takes a back seat. The truth becomes the priority. I tried to talk discreetly with other mothers from the school, the ones always active in WhatsApp groups or at events. Of course, I didn't get straight to the point. I just asked questions about the school owner, praised the environment, and waited for reactions. That's when I heard the first remarks. He's nice. Too nice, isn't he? The single mothers love him. One of them laughed and said, I saw him talking to your wife as she was leaving. Hey, what a nice chat. It was all a joke to them. But for me, each comment was a nail in the coffin. Receipts and bank statements began to reveal a strange pattern. Payments in cafes and restaurants that didn't match her schedule. App-based rides that ended near the school, even at times when she shouldn't have been there. Small gifts bought in specific stores that never came to me or our son. I knew she was careful. But the truth is, when someone's in love, attention to detail disappears. I gathered everything, organized it into folders, noted down times, dates, places. I was putting together a puzzle that hurt with every piece. And then came the first undeniable confirmation, an audio, probably sent by mistake, in which she said, I think it will be better if we do it outside the school this week. Your voice is becoming very familiar there. When I heard that, I was in shock. I felt a mixture of anger, sadness, and betrayal that I couldn't explain. I turned everything off, leaned against the bedroom wall, and stayed there for a long time in silence. Something inside me wanted to explode. Another part just wanted to disappear. But one thing became clear. Now I was sure. And the war was just beginning. Mauricio. I finally began to investigate who this guy was. Owner of the school for a few years. Former university professor. Single, or at least that's what he claimed to be. Always participating in events. Always involved with the parents, especially the mothers. His public image was perfect, successful, friendly, cultured. But the more I dug, the more I noticed a pattern of behavior. And worse still, it seemed he knew exactly how to use the school environment to get close to women, including married women. I began to understand that this guy was an experienced manipulator. He had that forced but effective charisma, always with a compliment on the tip of his tongue, always remembering people's names, always with that smile that seemed too sincere to be real. I started to recall when he greeted Camila at a school meeting. The hug was too long. His smile was too wide. At the time, I didn't notice anything. But now, looking back with different eyes, the scene became painfully clear. He was already hooking her, and I was 2 steps away, like a complete idiot. I discovered he used extracurricular activities as an excuse to stay in touch with the mothers. Camila, for example, began helping organize a school reading project, without ever being officially invited. One day, she said he asked for help preparing a psychological brochure for students. Another day, she claimed she was offering emotional support to the teaching staff. It all made sense then. But now, it was obvious, it was just a pretext. She was interacting with him in a way that went beyond professional. It was emotional, intimate, personal. I started mapping the hidden encounters. One was at a cafe near the school in broad daylight. Another in the parking lot of a shopping center. They didn't kiss in public or anything like that. They were careful, but there was too much physical contact, too many smiles, and too much time. Camila started wearing that perfume she reserved for special occasions. She wore new clothes to work meetings. That knot in my chest. It was like watching a horror movie where you know something terrible is about to happen, but you can't look away. And worse, the villain was playing the good guy the whole time. What killed me was how she talked about him. At home, his name began to appear frequently, always with praise. Mauricio is very intelligent. He has great pedagogical ideas. He helps the teachers a lot. When I realized he had become part of our daily vocabulary, I felt disgusted. Seeing the admiration in her eyes, the way she spoke about him, that hurt more than if she had simply betrayed me on impulse. It wasn't just physical. She was falling in love. She was giving away what should have been only mine. And that kept me up at night. The moment everything made sense was when I saw a photo of them, taken by a friend of mine who works at a restaurant. They were seated at a distant table, laughing, leaning toward each other. He held her hand on the table. The caption he sent was, "I thought you would want to know." There was no longer any doubt. It wasn't in my head. It wasn't an exaggeration. It was real, blatant, painfully clear. My wife was having an affair with the principal of our son's school. And I knew. She wasn't going to get away with it cheaply. They were going to pay. After that photo, there was no turning back. It was no longer just a broken heart. It was a matter of honor. But I knew I had to act with a cool head. No outbursts. No early confrontation. I wanted something equal to the betrayal. I wanted her to feel what I felt, for her world to collapse in public while mine fell in silence. I began gathering everything with greater precision. Traces of conversations, receipts, digital trails, photographs. I organized it all like a true dossier. If anyone doubted me, I'd have plenty of proof. The first confrontation was planned, but without revealing all the cards. I called her to talk, told her I felt distant, that I thought she was acting strangely. She hesitated, but denied everything, said she was just stressed with work and Lucas's school. The victim face she put on almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. When I mentioned that I thought she was too close to Mauricio, she froze for a second. That millisecond confirmed everything, but she quickly changed her tone and said, "You're making things up." Her audacity gave me even more strength to continue. I pretended to believe her, pretended to feel relieved. I spent the next few days being the most understanding husband in the world. I brought her coffee in bed. I was affectionate. I listened to her complaints with a smile. Meanwhile, every word she said disgusted me more. It was like living in a play, except I had already read the script and knew exactly how it would end. She had no idea what she was doing. What she didn't know was that at our son's graduation, an event full of parents, teachers, family, and students, I would display everything right there on stage, in front of everyone. I began planning the details calmly. I knew she would be there, beautiful, composed, proud of her son. I knew he would be there too, the school's beloved, the host of the event. I had already written a short speech, something that, at first, sounded like a thank you, but line by line, turned into a sermon. I also prepared a video with excerpts from messages, photographs, and even audio. Nothing vulgar, but enough to make it clear to anyone there what the two of them had been doing behind my back. Everything timed, everything calculated. I spoke with the graduation organizers and offered to say a few words on behalf of the parents. They said it would be great. After all, I was always seen as a present, participative, and polite father. No one suspected anything. I was the last guy who would make a scene. Precisely for that reason, it would be even more shocking. I set up a flash drive with everything, rehearsed what I was going to say, and every night, while she slept next to me, I looked at her and thought, "You have no idea the storm that's coming, do you?" And that, in a way, gave me peace. The day before graduation, she was excited, bought a new dress, got her nails done, styled her hair. She came to show me everything and said she wanted us to shine together as parents. Her poker face was a spectacle in itself. I smiled, praised her, and held back the vomit in my throat. Everything was ready. The next day, she would shine, but not in the way she expected. And Mauricio? He was about to find out what happens when you mess with the wrong family. The day of the graduation arrived with that festive atmosphere. The children were excited, the parents full of pride. Camila was radiant, dressed as if she were the star of the night. And ironically, she would be. We arrived early, took pictures with Lucas, who couldn't stop smiling. And there he was too, Mauricio, greeting everyone with that air of superiority, as if he owned the world. I pretended to be understanding, but I saw through that mask. I greeted him as if nothing had happened. He didn't suspect that in less than an hour, his world would come crashing down. When they announced that some parents would give speeches, Camila looked at me with pride. I thought she expected me to talk about our son, praise the school, and thank them for his education. And yes, that's exactly how I started. I took the microphone and took a deep breath. Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here, watching our son graduate, surrounded by such special people. But today, I didn't come just as a father. I came as a man, as a husband, as someone who believed in family. The audience's attention was immediate. Some smiled. Others noticed the shift in tone. I continued, keeping calm. For months, I lived a lie. While I thought my wife was helping at the school, she was being seduced. While I was taking care of our son, she was busy maintaining a relationship with the man who should guarantee the integrity of the school environment. The silence that followed was deafening. Camila's eyes widened like saucers. She tried to get up, but I raised my hand. Calm down. I'm not done yet. The tension was almost palpable. Some parents began to whisper. The principal, white as a sheet, was about to receive the final blow. I took the remote and turned on the projector. On the screen, excerpts of messages, audios, and photographs appeared. Nothing explicit, but everything was very clear, enough to leave no doubt about what was happening between Camila and Mauricio. Is this the real example our children receive? Is this what you support? Is this the type of man who runs this school? The place erupted into chaos. Shouts, gasps, a teacher covering a child's eyes. Camila began to cry, begging me to stop. Mauricio tried to leave the room, but two parents blocked the door. It was the end. Our son looked at me, confused, not really understanding. I knew that part was the hardest, but I'd rather he know the truth than grow up surrounded by lies. Camila fell to her knees, crying, begging for forgiveness. Gabriel, please. Not like this. Please. But I no longer felt anything for her at that moment. Only relief. I looked into her eyes and said, "You destroyed our family. Now admit it before everyone." I took Lucas by the hand and got off the stage. I left her there, kneeling, surrounded by critical gazes. We left the school without looking back. In the car, Lucas was silent. I took his hand and told him we would talk later, calmly, but that he should never, ever accept lies at home. I didn't know what life would look like from that moment on. I only knew that night would leave an impression on everyone who was there, and that Camila, so proud at the beginning of the evening, had been reduced to what she really was, an exposed traitor, stripped of her masks. The next morning, the scandal had already spread to the four corners of the neighborhood and beyond. I received messages from dozens of parents. Some were supportive, others surprised, and some simply curious. But most congratulated me. You had the courage to do what many only dream of. The school descended into chaos. One father demanded an emergency meeting. A mother canceled her child's enrollment. Teachers wanted to understand what was going to happen. Camila was expelled from the school's parent group almost immediately. And Mauricio? He disappeared. Literally. He didn't show up the next day. Rumors said he had gone on a trip for a few days. Coward. At home, the atmosphere was like a funeral. Camila cried constantly. She tried to talk to me, but I didn't respond. She tried to justify herself with lines like, "It was just a need. I felt lonely. I never thought I'd lose you like this." Pathetic. After everything she did, after hiding, lying, manipulating, she still had the nerve to play the victim. In one of her attempts at conversation, she even said, "I was going to end everything after graduation. I swear." As if that changed anything. As if cheating had an expiration date, and that would redeem her. The hardest part was talking to Lucas. I waited a few days until he was calmer. I took him for a walk, just the two of us, and I was honest, careful. I explained that Mom and Dad were going through a difficult time, but that it wasn't his fault. He listened in silence, holding back tears, and when he finally spoke, he simply asked, "Does she still love me?" That finished me. I told him yes, because despite everything, she's still your mother, and you don't need to bear the weight of her mistakes. But inside, I just wanted to forget she existed. The school, in turn, tried to silence the case. They issued a generic statement saying the principal would resign for personal reasons and that the administration was being restructured. But no one bought it. Some parents filed formal complaints. I heard that other mothers began sharing stories similar to mine about Mauricio's behavior. His castle was crumbling, and knowing that my actions triggered this was, in a way, gratifying. It wasn't just personal revenge. It was as if I had exposed a parasite hiding beneath the facade of an exemplary professional. In the following days, Camila tried all sorts of approaches, notes, messages. Even her parents came to talk to me, asking for a second chance for her. But I had already made my decision. Dignity cannot be negotiated. Not after everything I saw, everything I heard, everything I felt. She even suggested we go to couples therapy. The same woman who had been hiding an affair now wanted to fix everything with a conversation. Too late. I looked at her and said, "You had all the opportunities in the world, and you chose to take advantage of every single one of them." At the end of that week, I grabbed some clothes, my notebook, and went to my parents' house with Lucas. I said I needed time, but deep down, I knew that time was definitive. Camila was left alone in our apartment, crying, begging, trying to call. Every day I blocked her, not out of anger, but for self-preservation. Sometimes, to survive, we need to close the door tightly. And that's what I did. The first few days away from home were strange. It was as if I were floating, anesthetized. I slept badly, ate little, spent hours staring at the ceiling, unable to think clearly. My parents tried to help, but they knew there were limits. You can't fix a broken heart with a ready-made piece of advice. Lucas, on the other hand, surprised me. Even without understanding everything, he showed absurd maturity. He hugged me out of nowhere, told me he loved me, and that was what kept me on my feet. For him, I needed to recover. Explaining everything to him was the hardest part. I couldn't hide it completely. Children feel. I just tried to dose out the truth. I said that Mom and Dad were going through a bad time, and that maybe it would be better to live separately for a while. He asked if it was his fault. I almost cried at that moment, but I stood firm and said no, that he was the best thing that had ever happened to me, that nothing that was happening was his responsibility. And I promised that despite everything, I would always be there. Always. Over time, I got back into a routine. I took on more work. I immersed myself in remote service to avoid thinking too much. I started running early in the morning, more to tire my body than for my health. Running became therapy. There, the first real smiles returned, when the mind stopped going in circles and the body simply moved forward. To have control over my own life again, even in small aspects, gave me a sense of power. I had been betrayed, humiliated, yes, but I was not destroyed. I was alive, and with time, pain turns into strength. Friends and family were fundamental in this process. One or another even joked that I should write a book or a screenplay. Others said I had done what many only dream of, getting revenge with class. But I knew it wasn't that simple. Pain isn't taken away by applause. It took me time to understand that overcoming isn't forgetting. It's learning to live without. I started to rediscover myself. Simple things, like cooking for Lucas, binge-watching a series alone, going out for coffee without a time to return. Silly details, but they added color to the new life. Camila continued trying to contact us. I kept her blocked, except for the open channel about Lucas. Objective conversations. No room for manipulation. She cried during drop-offs and visits. Tried to start conversations, but I didn't give her the chance. I was colder, more direct, and she slowly realized there was no going back. That forgiveness may exist one day, but trust died there, in front of everyone, on graduation day. And when trust dies, no marriage survives, no matter how much nostalgia tries to deceive us. It was then that I understood, the end was not my failure. It was my new beginning. Every day, I was one step further from the chaos, and closer to peace. I began planning a trip, just for Lucas and me. Maybe a new home, a real new beginning, not on impulse, but by choice. And for the first time in a long time, I looked in the mirror and recognized myself again, not as the cheated guy, but as the man who had the courage to get up and move on with his head held high. If someone had told me a year ago that my life would be turned upside down by betrayal, I would have laughed. We never think it's going to happen to us. And when it does, the impact is devastating. But today, looking back, I realized that moment was a turning point. It hurt a lot. It took away my ground, my hunger, my sleep, and my faith in people. But it also gave me something I didn't know I needed. A real chance to start over, without lies, without a facade. Just me, the truth, and everything I wanted to build from it. If I could go back in time, maybe I would have paid more attention to the signs. Not because I think I could have avoided the cheating, because those who cheat choose to cheat, but because I would have prepared myself better emotionally. We trust people too much and forget to listen to ourselves. That inner voice, that discomfort, is not paranoia. It is a warning. And ignoring these signs is like trying to cover the sun with a sieve. An hour burns, and when it burns, it leaves marks. If anyone reading this is going through something similar, I can only say one thing. Do not dismiss yourself. Do not lose your identity trying to save what is already rotten. At first, I blamed myself a lot, thinking about where I had gone wrong and what I could have done differently. But you know what? I did everything right. I was present. I was loyal. I was a partner. The one who made the mistake, the one who destroyed it, was her. And as painful as it was to accept, it was liberating. It was not my fault. And if you are in this, maybe it is not your fault either. Cheating is not just about sex or lies. It is about the silent murder of trust. And without trust, there is no love that can survive. Today, I value my peace much more than any relationship. I understand that being alone can be 1,000 times better than being with someone who belittles you, erases you, or deceives you. I prefer to sleep peacefully than to share a bed with someone who lies, looking me in the eyes. Look, at first I thought I needed to destroy her and him. But what I did was not out of hatred. It was for justice. They exposed me to the cruelest pain. I just gave it back in the same way. And I do not regret it, because what happened at that graduation was not just about me. It was about giving a voice to all those who have ever been betrayed and silenced. About showing that dignity has value, and that the truth, when revealed, is the most powerful weapon there is. Today, I close this chapter of my life with less weight and a lighter soul. I do not know what the future holds for me, but I know what I no longer accept. The pain turned into strength. The betrayal turned into a lesson. And the end turned into a new beginning. Because, in the end, what destroyed me was not what she did. It was what I did not know. Now I know. And that has set me free.